Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Blue, and I am really, really excited to have this conversation. This is the first in a series of some LinkedIn Lives that I get to do with Hierology, and hopefully, we will maintain our composure and this won't be the last. Hopefully, this is truly the first.
This will be a real test.
Right, one of many. But very, very excited because you are brilliant and hilarious. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with Anil Harjani from Hierology, the Chief Revenue Officer, because you're all fancy and you have a fancy title. And I love that for you. So recently, I wrote a blog for Hierology, which I loved and was super passionate about. They gave me a deadline a couple weeks out, and I got on a plane and was like, I want to talk about this now, and like wrote the whole thing about why hiring needs to remain human, which in a world of AI and people trying to figure out how to make things less and less personal and less in need of humans, hiring is such a critical one to keep human and why we need to do that. So I am super excited to talk with you, get your expertise and insights and all of these things. So why don't we just start with you introducing yourself and hierology and framing the conversation?
Well, first and foremost, Anna, I'm so excited to spend
Yeah.
this 20 odd minutes with you. And no better way to have this conversation and talk about the topic that you've kind of penned about hiring needs to be human. And essentially the personification of that sort of title. And we're excited to talk to you. At least with Hierology and myself. I've been with Hierology about 7 years. I'm the chief revenue officer. I've played multiple different roles, but I really joined the business because of perhaps the things that you represented and you spoke about that
Mm,
were like hiring is hard. Hiring's always been hard. I've been in a
yeah.
a, a managerial or leadership position for several decades now, and at every time I go through a process of hiring, I just, I'm challenged by making this sort of like charged choice of like, how do I make a choice that is for this person to come join my organization? And it's an emotional choice, but it's also one that's anchored in skills and, intellectual honesty. But at the end of the day, you want to spend time with these people and you want to do great things.
Yeah.
And I think hiring at its core, is a very human interaction, and one of the few that I think we all get the privilege of experiencing. So that's why I think this topic is worth exploring, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
chat with you about it today. So again, it's one of those things that, I think it's important to start with some stories. And I mean, this is why we're
Ooh,
here. This is where we
hiring
go off the rails.
stories.
This is where we
Yes,
go off the rails.
hiring stories.
And as we were preparing for this conversation, I I recall perhaps about 10 or 10, 12 years ago, I was looking for a new role, and I won't use names here because we don't want to, we want to keep the innocent innocent. And I wanted to work in a sort of tech company in Chicago. I was really exploring those opportunities. And we're just going to dive into really what I experienced, which was I found like through three different introductions. First and foremost, that's typically how people find their job, through referrals.
Hmm.
I was able to get introduced to a CEO of a fast-growing company in Chicago, and he's like, come on in. One sentence, come on in. I go into the office. I'm waiting. I'm all suited up because I just want to be presentable. I'm prepared. I've researched this company. And I'm waiting in this conference room with no windows. And they said he'll be here shortly. 15 minutes go by. No one has shown up. I am wondering what is happening. By minute 20, he walks in, face in phone, texting somebody, and he goes, "Hi, I'm so and so." I'm like, "Yeah, I know who you are. First of all, I'm here to meet you." And so he sits down and he says, "Tell me about your background." He this entire time is stuck on his phone, like literally like texting somebody. And give him the spiel. I'm like, "Here's what I did, and I worked at a hospitality company before. We might talk about that a little bit." And I'm interested to sort of work at a tech company looking to get into hospitality. And he stops me about a minute and he's just like, yeah, yeah, I know what you do. I've seen the background. He had a piece of paper. He's like, here's what I want. Here's what I think we can do. If you're interested, We can talk to the HR team after this. How's that sound? I said, I guess I'll think about it. I'm like, do you have any other questions for me? No. Uh, three and a half minutes, three and
What?
a half minutes later, 3.5 minutes later, this person who was running probably a, $1 billion value of a company, and I was in that moment going, two things came to mind. One, I don't think I'm gonna work here. Two, I never want to be the leader or manager that, that interviews people that way. And
Yeah.
um and yeah, that was my, I mean, that could be the, I mean, listen, I don't know, great company, but that experience kind of like clearly stuck with me 12 years later.
Yeah.
And it really, and so I'm curious whether you've had an experience where perhaps you had the least human, maybe it was human. I don't know what it was, but it certainly left a taste in my mouth of going, this didn't feel right.
Well,
It
there's
was
no connection. You learned nothing. He learned nothing. Like there was no connection to the company, to the role, to anything. And like human connection. And especially when you're talking about hospitality, which I know that was a little different, but like hospitality is all about human connection. And so like it's even more critical in this industry. But yeah, that's wild. I don't know what I would have done. I
I mean,
would have been
I
like,
don't need to be sold. Like, I mean, like, it's a great company.
yeah.
But you're right. I don't need to be sold, but like, it gave me an element. Like, what it gave me was an insight into how this person runs this company, or
Yeah.
how the people in this company interact with him. And I think in that moment, while I was kind of like emotionally kind of turned off, I really thought through. I'm like, wow, if this is the way collaboration happens, or if this is an example of what working as company is, I don't know what's right for me. I don't know what's right for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think, and by the way, I over the years I've met people who used to work there, work for this individual, and
Mhm.
um and I would say like, so how was it working for him? And my instinct was on. I mean, it was like they're like, yeah, it's kind of sometimes kind of strange. Like he would come in late, say a couple of things, not really get engaged and move on. Great company, but somehow that interaction kind of held true. And I think that, I guess, set the tone. So I mean, I'm curious, Anna, like, do
Yeah.
you have anything similar? Did you have a similar experience, or is there like just to set the tone? I think the audience should,
Yeah.
I mean, to relate, I think everybody's had one of those. I'm curious whether you've had.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm curious whether you had something
No,
like that.
my second job. So I started my career in politics and I worked for a government affairs office for a major insurance company, kind of my first job out with the work wasn't anything that I was passionate about, but I had two incredible mentors, absolutely loved it. So I'm like, oh, the working world is great. Like that's all about human connection. And these people know me and I know them and we know each
Yeah.
other's kids. And it's a few years later and I'm in my mid 20s and I go to interview for what I thought was kind of like my dream organization,
Mhm.
a very sort of famous nonprofit that came to be during the civil rights movement and just, like says Anna Blue all over it. And sat down to interview to run online advocacy, which at that time, because, I'm old, was brand new. And like this idea of like emailing people to get them to take action, because this is pre social media and all of that. And so I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's so groundbreaking and innovative. What a great thing to be a part of. And she never made eye contact with me. She sat at her computer, kind of
Mhm.
facing this way, and I'm sitting here. And
Yeah.
she read the questions that she was given. I think HR sent her these questions and she opened them and she read them. And even when I would respond, there wasn't like a shift to like make any to like similar to you. Like there was no connection. There was none of that like, hello, I'm a human being. It was like, okay, I'm just gonna go through these things and you're gonna sit there. And so
Yeah.
it was the most awkward thing. Like I wanted to kind of go around and be like, hi, stand
I'm
by,
here. I'm
right?
here.
Like look over here. And
Yeah.
um and it was just really interesting. But here's actually the funny part of this story is well, one, unlike you, I did take the job and ended up quitting 6 months later. So
Okay.
this is
Right.
why it's important to to count
Right.
those first impressions. Like first impressions should
Mhm.
matter. But it turns out right at the very end, she turns and was like, that was great, you're fantastic, we'll be in touch. And then she looks at me and says, oh, you were in one of my classes at GW. She was my TA for a
No way.
class that we could have actually like made that connection at the very
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
And because she didn't turn to
Mhm.
look at me and just sort of like robotically went through this thing, And I think maybe it was that moment of like, oh, we can work together because like she remembered me, and maybe that's why I ended up taking the job, even though it really was like such a strange and bizarre thing, and completely the opposite of like what I had experienced in my first job interview out of college. And it was just, yeah. So I should have listened to my gut.
Shoulda, woulda, but we all live and learn. We
Here we
all
are.
Here we are. Um,
Yeah. All right. I love that. This is a lot of fun. I feel like we could just sit here and swap stories, and hopefully
yeah.
folks are now like, oh yeah, I remember that interview. But then on the other side, and we won't keep talking about all of these, like you have the ones that you really remember, right? Like the ones where somebody did really make that connection, and that reminds us of why I'm like it's so important to have those moments and to keep
Mhm.
hiring human, like not to keep saying the same thing over, but it's so important. And hospitality is, it's a people business, it's a service business, it's about connection, and it's about people. So tell me what you're hearing and experiencing, sort of being on with Hierology, which is an incredible platform. But what are what shift are happening with AI, with technology? What direction is hiring going in right now?
Yeah, yeah, and I think like we're such a pivotal moment in both the industry and with technology that they're kind of converging. There's so much market pressure in the hotel space. I mean, the labor market is tough. We know that already. It's only getting tougher. So it's not, it doesn't seem to be letting up, which is both unfortunate. It creates a challenge, but creates an opportunity. And hospitality, there's a shortage of labor, and we all know that. So, and then with that, there's a need to even hire more than there ever was because the market or the demand for travel and meetings are coming back and have been for a while. And we see that even in the software sector is actually a place where they're shifting back from they used to do a lot of during the pandemic they spent a lot of time the software sector doing sales, marketing, and support all remotely and use
Hmm.
email and phone calls to reach their clients. And what's happening that has become so noisy that they said now we have to go back in person because we know we need to be able to have better client relationships. So the sort of the group side of the house of the hospitality sector is coming back and is booming. And with that, there's a need for a lot of staff, frontline, events, etc., housekeeping. But what 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 hoteliers need to be have been doing is saying, okay, now I need to leverage automation and technology. I think, I worked in the hotel space for about 7 years at a big brand, and I traveled the world, and I saw the way technology was implemented. It was years to implement. Years. You went from like on-premise to cloud, and for whatever reason, that took forever. And I think because there's so many systems and they're so
Yeah.
interconnected and there's so many integrations, and it took what it was very enterprisey. Well, the world's really changed now where you can actually spin up systems pretty quickly and you can get time to value kind of quickly. And I think the hoteliers have been inundated and somewhat overwhelmed with the amount of technology. And because they're so used to these enterprise implementations, they're getting used to the idea of like, oh, you can get up and running within a month or two. And the answer is
Hmm.
yes, you can. And it's also you can do things with AI that you never could do before. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of education and learning that's happening in the hotel space that we're seeing in hierology that we could educate them on and say, well, one, it's easy to implement. Two, you can leverage these new tools because they typically have been kind of later in the adoption cycle of technology. So we spend a lot of time educating them on, AI and automation.
Yeah.
But three, where there's a push pull because hoteliers will say, much to your commentary, will say, "Well, I want to make sure I'm still being personal with the candidate,"
Yeah.
and um, and they're right because the candidate similarly is also using technology to apply for like 100 jobs at a time,
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
candidate also wants to feel a personal connection with their hiring manager. So hiring manager, recruiter, super stretched thin, doesn't have a lot of time. Candidate applying to a ton of places because it's hard to get a job too. And sort of this they want flexibility and they want choice. And I just think that it's like it's never been easier to do the job, but it's never been harder to engage and have a human
Mm.
experience. It's just like this
Yeah.
contradictions occurring. And so keeping human moments in our process is sort of like a kind of a mantra that we try to preach when we say, hey, if you're gonna have hierology or any platform, make sure you're doing, I'll have the humans do human things. Because
Mm,
because candidates, I think one thing's important to remember is that candidates apply for like 30, 50, 60 jobs. They only get to meet maybe three or four employers.
yeah.
Recruiters get to meet 20 or 30 or 40 candidates. There's
Yeah.
this kind of mismatch of like human
Mm,
connection and value that's occurring. It's so much more important for that candidate to feel connected than it is for the recruiter in that moment. And that expectation is not super aligned. And so recruiters are kind
interesting.
of like 15-minute phone calls, let's just touch base. Candidates are like I was prepping hours,
Yeah.
researching. They
Yeah.
want to show off their best selves. They are nervous. They want to feel equipped. Recruiters are in a transactional cycle just to keep up with life. And I think that
Mm,
shift is just exacerbating this challenge that's occurring. And so I
yeah.
think recognizing that, and I I think efficiency, the core point here is efficiency shouldn't replace empathy in its equation.
Mm.
And so the conundrum of this entire conversation is that you should use technology, but you should also be super empathetic. They can work against each other, and I think it's important to
Yeah.
have that balance.
I love that. And I think, I mean, this we'll save for another conversation, maybe over drinks, of just this idea of like balancing technology and empathy. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and it is really important.
Yeah.
And I know like HR leaders are struggling because, I have a wonderful friend who is head of HR for a hotel in Atlanta, and to her, like the human connection is everything. And so she
Mhm.
sits there and reads every single resume, and she says she goes through about 75 resumes every single week, and there's
Mhm.
probably a massive backlog behind that, but it's so important to her to maintain that connection and to feel like she knows who these people are. And then, so then she tells me that it's about, 10 days before she gets back to a candidate. And I'm like, oh, right. Because then you're getting on the other
Mhm.
side where candidates are like, yes, I want human. And also, I need to know where I stand. I need things to move along. So
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard for an HR leader that wants to do the right thing, that wants to hire in a human way, but also has technology and all of those things. I also love how you very diplomatically talked about how archaic the industry is and how slow it is to be able to adopt,
Yeah.
which anybody in hospitality will say and acknowledge. And so it's actually really fun to be on, as I am on the sidelines, sort of watching the industry adopt and step up to AI. So okay, so there is this kind of balance of priorities of
Mhm.
technology and automation and empathy, which is incredibly important. So like what is that practical first step to actually saying, okay, here's how you can make hiring more human or keep it human, if that's
Yeah.
where you are?
Yeah, so let's break it down. So I think the what's the human desire right now for a candidate? The human desire for a candidate is to feel like their application went somewhere and someone read
Mm,
it.
yeah,
Someone it was
right.
received.
There
Uh,
was a person on the other
there was a
side.
person
Yeah,
on the other side,
yeah.
and they got back to me. Quick side story because important. I won't tell you the year because it'll date me, but I did send a job application in the mid 2000s to a Chicago large company. It starts with an M, ends with a McDonald's. So like uh, that slip out. And I sent several because I there was multiple jobs open and I thought I had a capability to do multiple opportunities.
Hmm.
I didn't hear back. I moved on. I got another job somewhere else. 5 years later, I get a email back saying, "Thank you for application. We have reviewed and decided that this role was no longer a fit. We will keep your resume in our file and reach out to you." By then, I had got married. I had two children. I had another job, and you
So
know,
you're saying that when a company says we will keep your resume on file, that's not just BS. They are actually
it
keeping
really
it
was. I was in the
on
holding pen.
file.
I was in the holding pen,
Oh, that's
and
hilarious. Oh
so
my goodness.
that's where we were. We are much better now, I think, as a company and an overall industry. Don't just work for McDonald's. Keep love your Happy Meals.
Hmm.
But the reality is, candidates today. I mean, back then it was comical. Today it would just be egregious to do that. But candidates are like consumers. Candidates want instant gratification. I mean, Anna, just think of you and I like constantly, every day, every moment. It's like I want to click a button and it happens. I want to
Hmm.
I want to click a movie and it shows up. I don't want to wait 5 days for my Netflix DVD to come back to me. Okay, which we used to do
Right.
that. I want to click a button and it shows up at my house on Amazon for and within 6 hours. It's just we've optimized our entire life around this idea of like it should happen. It should just happen. We've
Yeah.
reduced the friction. And so for candidates, they have been optimized their entire life to say like if I click an application, why do I have to wait 5 days to hear back?
Yeah.
Or 10 days? Sorry, your friend, we need to have a conversation with your friend.
I know.
Please tell her, send me a text. We'll talk. It's just today's, because of this cure fact, 60% of job seekers expect an interview within 4 days.
Mm.
An interview. I don't just want to hear it in
Wow.
stock email or generic email. I want you to talk to me. I've done my research. I've done my research. I know your business. I am expecting to hear back 4 days. I want to talk to
Yeah.
somebody. And so like that's responding fast and keeping the tone again, just genuine, warm. Candidates are I have a lot of empathy for candidates because I've been one many times in my
Hmm.
life, and I
Yeah.
realized I think we have to remember the emotional state that a candidate's in. They are maybe without a job. Maybe they're trying to, fend for themselves, fend for their family. They're in between something and they're not feeling secure and stable. And I just think
Hmm.
our organization should put that at the center and realize the candidate's really the center of the conversation here. How do we make it more? How do we get back to them and give them respect? They did their job. They showed interest in my opportunity.
Yeah.
How do I show them respect and being speedy and personalized is kind of the core.
Yeah. I love that. And that whole idea of just like expectations have changed and you have a lot of folks in hiring positions that are thinking about what it was like when they went through this process and that might be, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, depending on how long they've been experts in their field. And so things have changed and people do, you're right. Like we all want immediate answers. We want to be able to buy something quickly and get this thing and know like information right away. You don't have to open an encyclopedia like I used to when I was a
Mhm.
kid. And um, so what is that like you mentioned 4 days. So that's like an interesting insight that I think that most HR leaders don't necessarily know that a candidate expects to hear back within four
Yeah.
days. I
Yeah.
think my last job that I applied for and went through that process, I mean, it was like 6 months between when I applied and when I started. So I know that the interview process was long, and I
Yeah.
definitely heard nothing in 4 days. What are some of the other, Hierology does a ton of data and insights. I've used
Yeah.
it, during my time in hospitality. What are the things that now matter most to candidates? What are they looking for?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, pay is the baseline. I mean, I think like everybody's got to pay market rate. Market rate, just
Yes.
research it, be within the band. Don't try to shortchange anybody. You got to figure out the rest of your operation if like you can't optimize your business for market rate. Now that's not the full story. I think what we've
Yep.
seen is a shift in priorities amongst the candidate base when we done these sort of surveys with candidates that come through the Hierarchy platform. In fact, 66% would take a lower pay for flexible hours. Now, it doesn't mean they would
Mm,
take a low pay. It's just a
right.
lower pay.
Lower. I'm glad you clarified that because that's
And I
really
think that's
important.
important.
Right.
Oh, I'm just gonna suddenly cut everybody's comp by
Right.
half and say,
Right. But
oh,
you can work
extra.
remotely on
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
Doesn't work that way. Don't take advantage of that. But I think it just shows you the sort of the full scope of value that comes within a job that people appreciate. Flexible hours are important. People are managing multiple priorities in their life. And so I think that came across with the pandemic. They valued that a lot more. That value equation shift quite a bit. And I think flexibility is one. Culture is another. They read into the culture pretty quickly, much like the story I shared before, and same with what
Yep.
you did. And then career paths, growth paths are important.
Mm.
They just want to know. They don't want a guarantee. Now, some people ask that question, and they're a little, maybe they're naive in their sense of like, okay, after 2 years I'm here, after 2 years I'm here. That's possible, but if everybody experienced that, everybody would be, the CEO, right?
Yeah, we'd
It's
all
not
be the CEO. That'd be great.
exactly. And so like it's just like examples of what may need to happen for that to happen and what are the opportunities that may emerge and are there other people that have done that. I think sharing those on
Yeah.
stories are really important. And so, and I personally have asked those questions in the past
Yeah.
and do it in a way that's respectful, but also the answers I get are tell me a lot. When people don't show I think the story that I heard and I recalled, and this was actually when I was joining a hospitality brand, and it was they said, "Hey, our desire is for you to work here in multiple roles. It's not to I want you to do really good at this job, but if you have interests, just let us know." And I said, my question back to them was, "Well, do you have some examples of where that's true?" Not sort of pressure test, but just really curiosity. And I got like 5 examples. I got 5 examples, and it was like rolling off their tongue.
Mhm.
Like it was just normal. And
Yeah.
I think when you hear that, you recognize that there is career growth that's not
Yeah.
over scripted. There is maybe a path, or that's their path, and I can be like, okay, maybe I could join that. Maybe that's a path I would enjoy. Now, maybe sometimes people
Yeah.
want more scripted career paths. They're like 2 years here, these very objective thresholds. If that's what you want, you should ask those questions as a candidate. But then you should be ready as an
Mhm.
employer to give that answer. Just don't BS the thing because
Yeah.
they will
Yeah.
smell it right away once they join, and then you've got a turnover issue. So, but I think that's what they look
Yeah.
for is flexibility, career path, culture, those type of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because oftentimes, folks think that that means that it's a certain type of candidate, right? Oh, if you want flexibility, it means that you're not going to work hard. If,
Hmm.
you're asking about growth because you think that you should be the CEO. And I think that
Hmm.
younger generations definitely get a bad rap in that way of sort of
Yeah.
these assumptions when people are asking those questions. So I love that context. I think it's so important. I think career pathing is huge. It's something that is actually so easy to do. And yeah, people just want to know that they can come and they can grow. And this is a place that they could build their career. Why wouldn't you want that? Like, why wouldn't you want to
Yeah.
give that to a person? Because don't you want them to come and
Yeah.
build their career and grow with you and,
Sure.
and think about what their career there could be in 10 years and 15 years? And it's sort of, we talk so much about turnover in the industry and turnover is huge. Well, this is such a simple way to combat that is to be like,
Yeah.
okay, there are many journeys you could have, and that's also what's beautiful about hospitality, but like career pathing, like here are some of those opportunities. And so I love that. I think that's so, so, so
I mean,
important.
isn't hospitality the ultimate career growth like yeah,
Yes.
story? I mean, it really is. I mean, have you ever met a GM that didn't start like, as front desk? I mean, like or
Right.
something, right?
Yeah.
It's just like constant. No one got very few GMs got hired in from the outside. And
Right.
so I think there's just so much movement and opportunity, and I really
Yeah.
appreciated that. And so I think it's the story needs to be told in a way that's I think just unique and resonates. And I think that's the opportunity.
So what's the balance then? Like you sort of have technology and automation,
Mhm.
and then you have connection and human beings, and you're talking a lot about kind of those priorities and that balance. Like, simply put, where does that balance lie between the two?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think technology is great to do the things that just back into the things that people would maybe not feel impersonal by,
Mhm.
if that's the right way to phrase it, if you're using technology to do the thing. So scheduling, for example, it's like I kind of like
Yeah.
I'm okay with my Google Calendar, which literally is on another screen over here. If
Uh-huh.
that's
Oh, all
if
the time.
that's
Yep.
technology, I want that to be technology enabled because guess what? I got like 40 things on there that I need
Correct.
technology to do the things. So scheduling or reminders, reminders to, in the recruiting process is like reminders to don't forget your interview, don't forget to do this and,
Yeah.
be ready for your interview in 10 minutes kind of thing. Those things technology should enable. Paperwork, onboarding paperwork, filling out W-4s
Hmm.
or I-9s. I don't need to sit down day one in a conference room for 4 hours with a paper slid in front of me. Are we laughing because we've done that before?
Ah,
Are we
the
laughing because
good
we've done
old days. The good old day,
We've
like
all
taking
done
the stack
that.
of paper home and like getting out your be like, oh, I need my
Here's
passport, and like here's all the
Here's the
forms.
binder. Here's the
Right.
binder. Please read the 14 policies that we've written, and read them and
Ah,
then sign and
yeah.
sign. It's like, I mean, it's we can go through buying a house quicker than we can getting onboarded in some
Yes.
situations. I
No,
think we've
it's
come a long
wild.
way. I mean, digital
Yeah.
automation for paperwork and onboarding have come a long way. So I think that you still do that. But when it comes to, certainly there's some parts of the interview process where I think people are experimenting with kind of, uh, you know, like digital interviewing or video interviewing. And I think those things are worth experimenting with in some capacity, especially for screening candidates at scale. I do think that's okay. I think at some point you obviously need a human in there. I just don't think you can go through an entire process without
Yeah.
having the real meaningful connection in that moment. Now, there's some ways you can blend it. Again, when I was a large hospitality brand, it was a for what reason I was really intrigued. Perhaps it was a sign. I was intrigued with our recruiting process at the corporate office. I would work with a
Interesting.
recruiter. I would work with a recruiter, and she said, I really want. She just said something to the effect of, I really want to have a really good experience for people who are coming to the corporate office, and they're
Mm,
sitting in the lobby for sometimes 15, 20 minutes at a time. And you know what
yeah.
that was interesting. Wow, this really resonates with me because remember that one interview I had was sitting for 15, 20 minutes? She said that to me. And it's like, you're right. Why do we have people sitting nervously in the lobby for 15 minutes? And usually what you do, one thing, you want some water? Great. And they're just sitting there
Right. And they're there. Yeah.
and they're just there and they're waiting for a meeting. And what we actually put into place, this is where the story comes full circle, is like we put into place and we said, we're gonna put an iPad and we're gonna fill the iPad with content of video from our CEO or CHRO
Mm,
talking about the brand, talking about the values. They can watch these videos and learn. And actually, it's a very personalized story saying, we welcome you, candidate, to the office. We want you
yeah.
to have a really great experience today. Here's some examples of people who've worked here a long time. And you should feel free to ask your questions to be yourself. I mean, it was like just an iPad that they could sit there and listen and get their mind off of something else. Because, what did we all do? We got our resume, our questions, and we'll just like going through memorizing our stories. And this is a way
Yeah.
to kind of break down, I think, and make it more genuine of a connection for both parties. So we use technology in a way to prepare the candidate
Yeah.
that made it a much more easier interview for them and for us at the time. So
Yeah.
I think that balance, so using that balance needs to come in. That's an example of one of the ways you can achieve that balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's so cool. And you also, that's like a little bit of an inside information on the type of candidate, right? Like if I'm sitting there and I choose not to pick up the iPad and look at things versus a candidate who,
Yeah.
sits there, looks, and now takes that story or that piece of content that they just consumed into the interview and is like, oh, you know what I
Mhm.
just learned about your company? Like that's actually a really great way to also see how the candidate responds and balances technology with the human piece.
Yeah.
So you've talked a lot about, sort of the some of the ways that we can make that connection and strike that balance. And I really think that the last message that we want to send, but inevitably oftentimes it happens, the more sort of tech automated we get, is like we value systems more than people.
Yep.
So how do you caution hiring leaders against that to really send a different message?
Yeah, I think just like hospitality has touch points, like,
Hmm.
from the point of booking to the follow-up, the pre-email, the date, the arrival. And so, And I this really resonated with me. Again, I can't use, I don't want to use the brand names, but I did go visit as
I'm
part of my
so
work.
curious. We're going to have a conversation
We're
where you're going
gonna,
to
I
name
mean,
everybody after this.
I'm gonna spill all the tea, all the tea. And this was actually a good story because when I walked into one of this a really high end property, it was in the Chicago area, and I asked them, how do you make sure, what is the journey for the guests from the point to get out of the car to the point to get to the front desk? And they had the most intricate, intricate understanding of that experience and
Mm,
explained it where they had clear handoffs and it was seamless and it was also improvised. And I was like, you thought this through. Like it's like a luxury. Luxury is not just the bed sheets and the pillowcase and the sh type of
right.
shower and like, it's in the food. It was like the luxuries in the nonverbal cues that are given,
Yeah.
and I just was enamored by this whole idea that these things matter. These things, the fact that a
Mm,
billion dollar brand, it mattered to them, means it matters to the people, means it matters in everything we
yeah.
do, means it matters in
Yeah.
hiring as well. And so I think just remembering that you got to remember the touch points of the candidate where they interact with your brand is just the same way you need to think about it. So a simple thing, for example, I do, and we don't have to operate like multi-billion dollar brands per se, but we can operate with a sense of empathy that I think meets the same goal. So
Yeah.
some things that I try to do if I'm trying to hire somebody from my team or a direct report to me, we'll go through the entire interview process. But at some point, I'll say, I'll just text the candidate and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to 10 minutes to talk? And I'll take that conversation
Mm,
just walking out of my house on a phone call. And I'll just say, hey, just, I got no questions. I just want to just see how you're feeling. I mean, it's the most unscripted conversation I could have because guess what?
yeah.
That is basically 80% of the interactions that I would have with my team is
Hmm.
unscripted in the moment. How are you
Yeah.
feeling? What's we're going through your head? How do we problem solve? And I just want them to know that I can be that kind of manager for them or leader for them.
Mm,
In that moment, the guard comes down. They don't have their resume in front of them.
yeah.
They're not worried about what my nonverbal cues on a Zoom call looks like, or how I'm like observing their every interaction. And we're just having a conversation, just like kind of old school on the phone, you know?
Yeah.
And it
I love that.
and that and oftentimes candidates will say, I really like that you just call me, just have the chat.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that chat will veer into some personal thing that's going on for them or for me. And it's you break it down. And you know what? If anything, and I will also say that I also thank them again for their interest. And I'll be genuine. I
Yeah.
mean, really, interest in I'll acknowledge that I know I know you're taking a risk with perhaps considering our company. And the risk is
Yeah.
equal, but the risk is greater for you because you got to make a choice. You're committing
Mhm.
your time and energy. And
Yeah.
I think I'll just acknowledge, I think that's the thing, acknowledge some of those things.
Yeah.
Is important. So I think that's just one
I
example.
love that. I'm
Just one
sold.
example.
Are you hiring? Can I come work for you? Because I'd really like to.
We can talk after this. We can talk after this.
No, that's awesome. And how you started that with that connection of like, especially in hospitality, we spend so much time on the consumer journey. Like we should be spending just as much time on the applicant journey and
Yeah.
the employee journey because their thoughts and feelings and opinions matter. We want them to show up and be their best selves. So we have to like give that as well. And hospitality's done really well in sort of moving forward with the balance of automation and technology and personalization and empathy on the consumer side. So how do we
Yeah.
continue that on the guest side as well? You've given so many tips and tricks. I think anybody who is listening to this who does people hiring, whether at mass scale or just for their team, can learn so much. So, okay, if you were to narrow this down, 'cause you've given a
Yeah.
lot of things, we're going to get super practical. Like
Sure.
right now, rapid fire, 2 to 3 things that leaders should do right now to keep hiring warm and centered on human beings.
Yeah. I'll give 3 quick tips
Okay.
and I'll tell you the why after that. So respond quickly. We've talked about responding quickly. Candidates
Hmm.
expect interviews within 4 days. don't forget, your friend is in trouble. We need to talk to your friend.
Right.
10 days is too long. Just acknowledge the application. Even
Yes.
just acknowledging the application is important. Second is personalized communication. Mention something for the resume. Sometimes the last thing on the resume is their kind of their personal interests. Start
Mm,
there. Start
yeah.
there. Why not? Why not? That's where they're perhaps spend the other half of their life on. Let's go
Yep.
there. So make it more personal, and ask them some why questions. Why are you interested in this property? What's catching your interest? You get a little deeper. And finally, train managers to just conduct interviews that are conversational. Just
Mm,
as much as we have guides and interview guides, I think just like every skill, practice makes perfect, and interview is a practice of its in of itself and a skill in of itself.
yeah.
And I think the guide gets you started, but it's not where you end. And so because the end is to be conversational and to
Mm,
relate. And so these things, the ultimate goal has to be this is a non-negotiable is trust and connection. That
yeah.
has to be the end game of all these things. Technology and human experiences is trust and connection. If so, and at the end of any interview, rate yourself, perhaps. Did I build trust?
Mm,
Did I
yeah.
build trust in this conversation?
Did I
Did,
do
did I
it?
did I do it? Not is this
Yeah.
candidate. Rate yourself first before you rate the candidate. I mean, let's turn it on its
Mm.
head. And so I would say those are the three tips I've got.
I love that. My very first interview, which was for this government affairs office, like little Anna Blue coming, or I was actually Anna Beardsley at the time, coming into corporate America. And he never asked me anything related to the job. He just had a conversation with me. And I still like, he is still a mentor and a friend, and
Yeah.
he is the first person to hire me. And I remember it saying later to him, like, that was not what I thought job interviews were supposed to be. And
Yeah.
he said, it's an admin position. I can teach you anything you need to know about the
Mhm.
job. What I wanted to know is, can we work together? Do we have a
There you go.
connection? And it was so great. Like we had a conversation about my last name and about movies and all of these things. And he was like, I wanted to just learn about who you were. And I've always carried that forward in my
Mhm. Mhm.
interviewing.
Yeah.
That same, like, the way he made me feel, can I make others feel that way? So this has been so great. I love all of this. I think that we're getting further and further into this, rapid AI automation, and people are I was actually at a hospital yesterday. My best friend had a baby, and they're talking about, like, at what point do robots take over anesthesiology? And I was like, what is happening?
That's quite a
I really
conversation for a
yes.
person who just had a baby. I mean, you got
It
pretty deep
was a
there.
lot. Yeah, no, it did. It was fascinating. And so how do you, like, these are the constant conversations that we have to have of how do we as a world keep things centered and human. And you gave so many good, like, and not just good, but really important pieces of advice that I hope folks are listening and learning from, because it really is important. We can be both. We can be technologically advanced, and we can also be human beings. And that's so important.
Here, here. You got it. So, I mean, I guess we're here to wrap up now, Anna, and just
Yeah, this is it.
leave the audience with kind of what we learned.
Yeah.
Real quickly to make sure that we hone the points because all they'll be talking about otherwise is my terrible interview that I had 12 years ago. Uh, Hospitality is always going to be a human business, and so
Yeah.
your recruiting needs to be human. Technology is there for speed and efficiency, but remember those human touches, empathy, connection, respect.
Mm.
Those things are the difference makers and truly will be. Um, hiring process must be a reflection of warmth and service that
Yeah.
define kind of the industry that hospitality is and why I was there for so long and loved it and bring it to, it's in my bones, I would say. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think it's in yours too, Anna.
It
And
is. Yeah.
so, and then use technology to create space. Technology can take away the noise of sort of the admin stuff and just create space
Mhm.
for personal connections and not replace them. And on that note, I'm glad we shared this sort of time for
Yeah.
personal connection today. And I hope we
Mhm.
get, definitely more opportunity to do this again, Anna. So
Yeah.
with that, that's a wrap. I
Awesome.
appreciate your time.
Yes, this is a lot of fun. Thanks, Anil. I appreciate you.